Trey. At this point, I think that both sides are working together to keep us in chaos. I honestly sat out voting for the president because I don't believe in voting for the lesser of two evils. Yeah, listen, I did not vote for Joe Biden. I did not vote for Donald Trump. Um, I was I've never voted. I was never going to vote for Trump after a couple of things he said. Like in 2016, he basically promised to violate every one of the Bill of Amendments in his in his campaign coming up. He basically promised to violate every single one of the the Bill of Rights, the Bill of Rights. Um, the only one he didn't like the Third Amendment was like he didn't. You could tell he was leaning towards it, but he didn't explicitly say. But during his presidency, he said a couple of things that said, "Okay, there's your promise and your attempt to violate the Third Amendment." Uh, but then with Joe Biden, the reason, and I was sick to my stomach when Joe Biden actually won because of his horrible record on criminal justice. And a lot of people don't realize is that crack law, that was Joe Biden's handiwork. The 100-to-1 ratio was Joe Biden's handiwork in 1986. The Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986, where he created the mandatory minimum that you would get 100 for 100. Okay, so I got to say this right. That one, the ratio of crack to cocaine to powder cocaine was 100-to-1, or yeah. So that for 500 grams of powder cocaine, you would get the same sentence for as 5 grams of crack cocaine. It was just absurd. And what was really absurd was that his son is a well-known drug user, including crack, but has never been held accountable for any of that. But he had no problem destroying the lives of so many others with these laws. In 1988, I think it's 1988, like September 7th, something, 1988, Joe Biden gets on national television to give an address to the nation. He's giving an address to the nation because it's a response to George Bush's address to the nation. George Bush had just addressed the nation about the drug crisis. And so Joe Biden is providing the Democratic response, and he gets on TV and he says that, among other things, that George Bush is not tough enough on drugs. Yes, Joseph Biden, the same president, then Senator Biden, then the senator from Delaware, Biden, who is now the president of the United States, Biden, gets on television, gets on public television, and tells the country that George Bush is not tough enough as regards the war on drugs, and that he needs to do more in the war on drugs, and that we need to hold drug dealers, drug traffickers. We need to hold them accountable, but we need to do more. We need to hold drug users accountable, because without them, there would be no market for the drugs. That's what Joe Biden says. 1989. 1 year prior, Hunter Biden was arrested in Jersey, I think Atlantic City, with drugs. And guess what? The case was dismissed, disappeared. No charges, no charges pursued, no jail time for him. And that was a year before Joe Biden, Senator Biden, got on national television and told the nation that we need to hold drug users accountable, because without them, there will be no market for the drugs. That's who Joe Biden is. It's always funny, and they talk about Ronald Reagan, and they say, "Oh yes, small government," and he was known for that statement. Government isn't the solution, government's the problem. But he supported the federal war on drugs. Like, there's not even constitutional authority for the federal war on drugs. So a lot of people don't even realize it. So I had gotten into it some years ago on Twitter with somebody, because I was talking about how the VCCLEA, the Violent Crime Control Law Enforcement Act, also known as the Crime Bill of '94, which Biden wrote, but I was speaking of it at that point in terms of that Clinton had, signed it into law, and Hillary had been promoting it. So I was talking about how that law just wreaked havoc and it was no good. And the person that wants to argue against me says, well, what's your problem with it? I bet you don't even, I bet you can't even articulate a problem with it. I says, well, it's unconstitutional. He says, how so? How's it unconstitutional? I said, well, because the federal government doesn't have police powers. The federal government is given 17 enumerated, the Congress is given 17 enumerated powers, and policing isn't one of them. He didn't respond after that. Just silence. It was just silence. But like, it's amazing. All these constitutional authorities, including clowns like Tom Cotton, who claim to care about the Constitution but have no problem with Title 18, which is in itself a complete and utter violation of the Constitution. The United States Congress does not have power to create policing laws, does not have the power to create criminal laws. They've done it under the guise and the intentional misapplication of the Commerce Clause. That's why if you look at all of these laws in Title 18, Title 21, the drug laws, you will see that they will always say in and affecting interstate commerce or engaging in interstate commerce. Why? Because that's what they have to use in order to justify the existence of that law, because they have no authority to just create criminal law. So they have to claim that they're regulating commerce, even when the criminal activity they're outlawing isn't actual commerce. So they've broadened the discussion to say that, oh, well, it doesn't have to just be engaging in commerce. It just has to have a de minimis effect on commerce. This is the stuff that Congress has done and has been doing for decades, and that your all of these so-called constitutionalists, your Ted Cruz's, your Tom Cottons, your Josh Hawleys, all these scumbags will claim to support the Constitution, but then ignore the fact that Title 18 is a overreach, if it is an exercise of authority that Congress doesn't have. Clinton was no better. Absolutely, Clinton was the Clintons, Reagan. I hate all of them. I hate all of them. I hate all of them. And hate is not a strong enough word for me. Some people say, oh, hate is a strong word. No, hate is not a strong enough word for me, because these people have actually destroyed people's lives. So while the police are the ones that are on the ground doing it, like I said, there's somebody pointing the finger. There's somebody giving the orders. That's your presidents, your mayors, your governors, your senators, your congresspeople, your assemblymen, your city councilmen. These are the people that are actually giving the orders to these cops that are getting people murdered, getting people killed. And that's the focus. That's what they don't want us to do. They don't want us to stop focusing on the cops. They want us only focused on the cops so that we don't see how much they are responsible for all of this stuff that's happening, because they don't actually want to give up their power. They don't actually want to change anything. They are not just part of the problem. They are the problem. Qualified immunity needs to be banished, but saying that means you're pro-crime. See, qualified immunity, and it's amazing that they'll say, oh, well, without qualified immunity, cops won't be able to do their jobs. So you mean cops intend on breaking the law? Because qualified immunity means that you'll be held accountable if you break the law. Like that, just like ignorance of it isn't an excuse. That's it. Like, well, we didn't know. We didn't know we weren't allowed to shoot him 41 times, even though he didn't have a weapon. We didn't know. But qualified immunity is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's other immunities we need to be going after as well. I think we need to go after legislative immunity. I think politicians need to be held accountable for the stupid laws that they are enacting, and not just proposing. If it doesn't actually make it into law, but once it makes it into the law, once you actually have created a law that is harming people, I think there needs to be accountability.
Thank you for checking out this clip of Escaping the Echo Chamber. If you would like to check out the entire live stream, you can click on the screen now, or you can click on the link in the description box below. I'll see you next time.